Hey everyone, it's the Kung Fu Genius, aka Alex Richter. And if you're listening to us on audio only, I'd appreciate you rating and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen to it. And of course, if you like what I do here, don't forget to subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius on YouTube and hit that bell for notifications. Are you a fan of Wing Chun Kung Fu? Well, if you listen to me, I assume you are. I got great news for Kung Fu Genius fans. Right now, you can get an all-access 1-month free trial subscription to Wing Chun Illustrated magazine. Yes, I said free. Go to WCInewsstand.com and register in the upper right-hand corner, fill in your email and password, and use the code KFGTrial to get your free trial to the issues from 2011 to the current issue. That's right, all the issues, even the one with this guy on the cover. My Kung Fu Genius column is in all the new issues, as if you need another reason to get this awesome magazine. Go get your free trial subscription today. For all that information, check out the description below. And with that, let's get started.
Alright peeps, on today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be answering all sorts of hot nonsense from YouTube. Lots of gems, lots of Francis Ngannous, lots of... Did Judo Gene really teach Bruce Lee grappling? Let's get to it.
He is unstoppable, unbeatable, unbelievable. He's Alex Richter, the Kung Fu Genius.
And every day, I practice martial arts. Watch out! Word is, I'm a Kung Fu genius. Practiced all day like a genius.
Yo, Dre, how you doing, man?
I'm smooth, Seafood.
You smooth today?
You smooth?
I've been smoother, but pretty smooth. I
don't know, man. I'm hearing you got some drops to drop on us.
I got some drops to drop on us.
Some eye drops.
Some eye drops. Oh. Yeah, so you mean, normally we do our AMA format because that's kind of the easiest thing for us to do. We don't need to plan anything. You provide the amazing questions and I give some mediocre answers. And so that makes it quite easy. But yeah, every now and again we'll do a topic episode.
Some bombs.
But today is not really a topic episode. It's going to be our normal AMA setup, except that I got something to talk about at the beginning, all right, rather than answering a question. Yeah, like the news cycles in Chinese martial arts are very few and far between, right? Like, looking for newsy stuff to talk about in Chinese martial arts, traditional Kung Fu Wing Chun is not easy because unless there's an IP Man movie coming out or some delusional Wing Chun idiot decides to fight an MMA guy, there's really not that much news stuff that comes up. And certainly what I'm going to talk about today doesn't really qualify as news by any stretch of the imagination. It's got a bit of an old story. But lately, it has been kind of making the rounds a little bit. I know a big YouTube channel that handles Bruce Lee stuff, Golden Bell Training. They're friends of the podcast. And he's
I've seen him
commented before. He's got great videos. He recently was talking a little bit about Bruce Lee's judo instructor and judo experience and stuff like that because, just like I think in one of the recent episodes that we talked about, there's that photo floating around of Bruce Lee holding a long pole when he was a teenager and everyone's like, oh, well, obviously he learned long pole because he's holding it, right? Which is like ridiculous, right? There are photos of me in a ninja costume. It's like, well, obviously he was a ninja when he was a kid,
me
right?
Over the weekend, I went to pick up my long pole from Brooklyn Wing Chun, and I'm holding it.
Oh, you got a long pole?
Got my long pole.
Oh, that's amazing.
I haven't learned it, so I'm just with it, holding it. So.
Yeah, well, you did. I did teach you the strength training, the basic stuff, right? Yeah. So you're getting ready to do it for reals, right? Yeah, that's right. So my student Ethan, who runs our Brooklyn branch, he makes his own long poles as well. Yeah, so you got one of the Brooklyn long poles.
He loves this pole so much. He's like, I wish I made this for myself.
Because he's getting better at making them. So each one he makes is like better than the first one he made for himself, right? Yeah. Got it.
Steal my pole.
Yeah. So basically, some of these topics about where Bruce Lee. Whether Bruce Lee had trained judo or knew judo and stuff. This has been kind of making the rounds a little bit in the last couple of months because there is actually a photo of Bruce Lee wearing a judo gi back in the Seattle days. And I think even a photo or so of him doing like tossing someone or whatever, right? And so, of course, what do people do when they see a photo? They always make these like grandiose assumptions. Like, well, obviously, he had been doing judo for years if there's one photo of him wearing a judo gi or something like that, right?
I'm pressed to believe he had his own personal photographer around all the time.
Well, not at that time. In Seattle in the 50s, he was a broke ass dude living in Ruby Chow's restaurant, right? So I don't think
he was a Banff.
Yeah, he was a Banff. All right, he was a broke ass
MFer.
Yeah, mother fronter, and so and so yeah, I don't think he had a personal photographer at that point,
at that
point. Yeah, so there are like a couple stories that have been in like the Bruce Lee news cycle, and they tend to intersect a little bit. So one of them is this more recent. Did Bruce Lee train judo? How extensive was his judo training?
Did he train judo?
Yeah, he did a little bit in the Seattle time period because his first student, Jesse Glover, was a judo practitioner and had taught Bruce some judo, and also Fred Sato, who was around at that time, also gave Bruce some judo instructions. And this would be very early on in Bruce Lee's career, because I think Bruce Lee came...
Fred Sato?
Fred Sato, S-A-T-O. All right, Sato, like Karate Kid Part 2, don't you know?
Okay.
Yeah, so... So anyway, he did learn a little bit, and that would have been very early on, because, like, let's say 1960 or something like that. I mean, Bruce came to the States 1959, 1958, I think 1959 he came. So this is very early Bruce. We're not talking about, this isn't even like, this is way before even Green Hornet and stuff like that. So very early on, like, so he was learning a little bit or whatever. So judo wasn't really something foreign to him later in his martial arts career. But there had been some kind of speculation, especially about judo, the great judo Gene LeBell, and whether he had taught Bruce Lee grappling. And then that story intersects with Quentin Tarantino's bullshit story, all right, where Quentin Tarantino basically asserts that, his depiction of Bruce Lee in Once Upon a Time in China, Once Upon a Time in America. Once Upon a Time in China is a movie with Jet Li from the 90s.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because Once Upon a Time in America is a completely different film.
You're right. Man, I am all off to. I have not had enough of my coffee from Culture yet.
Not enough of that Sakto.
Yeah. By the way, if you guys, Culture Coffee wants to sponsor us, that'd be awesome. It literally keeps us fueled, except I needed to drink it before today's episode. So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, all right? So, he has that depiction where Bruce Lee kind of goes toe-to-toe with Brad Pitt's character, and technically it's a draw, but he makes Bruce Lee look like a blowhard, and he gets slammed into the car and stuff like that, right?
Which looks crazy.
Yeah, and it's just weird to watch that, even though I didn't think that the actor Mike Moe did a really good job. I thought that a lot of other actors...
You play a good Bruce?
No, I think Bruce is a hard person to play because it always just looks like people are doing a bad Bruce Lee impression. You know what I mean? And
I could have did a better Bruce Lee.
Yeah, it just looks like a bad Bruce Lee impression. It looks like you're watching a Saturday Night Live skit. I've never seen Jason Scott Lee, who played Bruce Lee in Dragon the Bruce Lee Story. Although that movie gets a lot of shit, also from us, we give that movie a lot of shit. But one thing you could say about Jason Scott Lee is that he played Bruce Lee in the spirit of Bruce Lee. He wasn't really trying to do a Bruce Lee impression. And so for, good, bad, or indifferent, I think that allowed that movie to stand out a little bit. Whereas anyone else who plays Bruce Lee, they look like a bad Vegas imitator. You know what I mean? And so when you're watching, that's probably fitting for Quentin's movie. But it also was a bit distracting. But anyway, like, obviously people who know about Bruce Lee or who are Bruce Lee fans took offense. Now, I get it. Like, look, I'm also adult enough to know, or you want to poke fun at Bruce Lee's expense, whatever. It's cheap. But whatever. It's fun. Like, I'm not going to have a meltdown because you tried to make Bruce Lee look bad or whatever. But Quentin, instead of just admitting that this was a fictional take, blah, 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 he's tried to say, no, actually, that whole thing is based on something that happened.
That happened on a set.
That happens on the set, and it kind of concerns Judo Gene LeBell. And what it is, it's just a conflation of a few different stories and some half-truths and some untruths, and then he just kind of puts it in a salad bowl and mixes the whole thing, and then now it's a real story, right? So
that's what I do.
That's what you do with everything I tell you, right? All right? Yeah. So
I'm offended by this now.
I was at Wan Kam Leung's party, and we saw, is that where Johnny Gill was there? No, that was another story entirely, right? Yeah, so
Story gumbo.
Story gumbo, yeah.
Story gumbo,
yes.
that shit.
Yeah, the funny thing is when I can assume at some point we meet some long listeners of the podcast and they'll tell a story that I told on the podcast and you'll mess it up and you were literally here when I told it, right? Right. So anyway, our good friend John Little, who used to work for the Bruce Lee estate for years, he put together a number of the books that they published, and he basically had the keys to the mansion in terms of access to Bruce Lee's notes and the daytimers and everything like that. And so if there's anyone who really knows the most about what Bruce Lee was doing on a day-to-day basis because of his access to the daytimers, it's John Little. In addition to him knowing what Bruce Lee had written in his notes, and he also did extensive interviews with people who knew Bruce Lee. So John Little and I, we chat every now and again about stuff. I'm still trying to find a good reason to get him back onto the podcast.
This might be a good reason.
Because all of the episodes, the 2 episodes with him are still in our top 10 most watched, months after those episodes came out. So we've been talking lately, we would put it to you that way, and one of the things that he's mentioned to me on a number of occasions is that this thing that's so accepted in martial arts lore, Gene LeBell, all right, whom, by the way, I'm a huge fan of. When I was a teenager, I got a bunch of Gene LeBell's instructional videos, which I didn't realize that they were actually professional wrestling holds. I thought they were actual, because in the 90s when I was a teenager, that was like the beginning of UFC and all those kind of things. So I was also interested in grappling and learning a little bit about that stuff. And I ordered like a couple videos from Gene LeBell because it was like finishing holds. And what I didn't realize is they were all like pro wrestling holds. And he's wearing like
finishing moves.
He had a partner named Mondo, that's what he called him. I don't know if that was his real name. And they're wearing like wrestling tights.
Okay.
And he's showing all these crazy holds and yelling, and it's so ridiculous. And I showed it to one of my friends, Brady Hall, who's a filmmaker, and he thought it was the funniest thing ever.
His partner was Mondo, not Milo.
No,
not Milo Savage.
Not Milo Savage. That's another story, right?
Oh, man.
So Gene LeBell, is someone who is kind of a legend in martial arts circles, right?
Yeah.
And he was one of the first, if not the first, to have an actual mixed martial arts match that was in the open. I think it was even as early as the 50s, although it could have been in the 60s. Where there was a boxer named Milo Savage who had kind of challenged any martial art, basically saying that his boxing could beat any kind of Asian martial art or whatever, right?
Wow.
And Gene LeBell answered the challenge and fought Milo Savage, a boxer, in a boxing ring, and Judo Gene, as he's called, wore his judo gi and basically did what, nowadays, as we've had so many years of watching mixed martial arts, and you think, you probably know exactly what's going to happen. So Gene went and swarmed him and grabbed onto him and put him on the ground and basically choked him out. And, of course, audiences at that time had no idea what that was, and they thought he had, killed him or something, and they're booing,
in the middle of the ring,
throwing shit into the ring, whatever. Yeah. But Gene LeBell is that dude. So Gene LeBell, even though what I'm going to say about him in a little bit is not going to be the most flattering stuff about Gene LeBell. But let me just set the record straight, all right? Gene LeBell's a badass. Yeah. Gene LeBell is as tough as nails as they come. Yeah. All right? In fact, I remember in that crazy instructional video where he's showing all these crazy-ass wrestling holds, he even had a theme. He had a Gene LeBell theme song. And it was like a guitar song, and I just remember one of the lyrics was his skin is tough as leather, his eyes are cold and black, or something like that. It was ridiculous, but it was obviously kind of a joke. Yeah, because he is an entertainer. He's a consummate entertainer. He understands about playing the heel and playing the bad guy. Right. So in addition to being a legitimate judo practitioner and grappler and expert in wrestling, he's also a kind of a pro wrestling dude. He was a stuntman in Hollywood. It worked on lots of TV movies. I think he was still acting as a stuntman as late as the first Rush Hour movie with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, but not doing major stunts. And I don't know if you know that Muhammad Ali had a famous bout with a wrestler, Antonio Inoki, in Japan. I don't know if you know about that. No. Where they were in the ring in Japan, and it was Muhammad Ali versus a wrestler, and it's bizarre because Antonio Inoki tries to kick his legs, and Muhammad Ali at one point goes up on the ropes and he's lifting his leg. He doesn't even know what's going on. It's just batshit crazy. Gene LeBell was the referee for that match. All right, so
this is what, 80s, 70s?
No, this is 70s, man. This is in the 70s. This is like when Muhammad Ali's career was a little like he's starting to do spectacle stuff.
If anyone knows the link to that,
it's on YouTube. You just Google Muhammad Ali wrestling in Nokia and like you'll find it right away. Well, Gene LeBell was the referee for that. So Gene LeBell is not just like some guy who teaches judo somewhere. I mean, Gene LeBell has been around for a hot minute. I think Mikey looked at him. He's 89 years old at the time of this recording. And so, I mean, he's been around for a while, respected stuntman, legit. He, I think, was teaching out of Benny the Jet's Jet Center for the longest time. So, I mean, like, Judo Gene LeBell is as legit as they come. And the dude used to wear, like, a pink gi for the longest time. Just because he was such a tough dude. And I think the story was, like, he had a white gi. He washed it with something that was red once. And then it turned out pink. And he's such a badass. He was like, whatever, right? So, I mean, like, okay, so, like, I have to preface what I'm about to say.
Oh, okay.
And then, like, I'm a Gene LeBell fan. I think Gene LeBell's a total badass. People who meet Gene LeBell let him choke them out because it's like an honor to be choked out by Gene LeBell.
Get the T-shirt.
Yeah, but, you know, sometimes he does things that, like, I don't know. I don't think that's true. I've seen, like, a couple videos on YouTube where he's choking some 20-something-year-old dude out. The guy goes out unconscious, like he's passed out. And then Gene takes a cup of water and dumps it on the dude's crotch. Oh. And when he comes to, he's like, "Yeah, you pissed yourself." You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, you know, like,
he got
so
pranks.
He's a showman. He likes to be the heel. He likes to be a bad guy. But like, you know, he's kind of like martial arts royalty in America and especially in California and for that time. And
I mean, I've heard of him, but I've never like watched anything on him.
So I have to say that, all right? Because he's also a consummate showman and he also kind of famously got into it with Steven Seagal, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But
I did hear about that too.
Anyway, you did hear about it. I told you about it a moment ago. Yeah. And we talked about it before the episode. So anyway, this stuff comes up because like the Bruce Lee's judo teacher, and was it Gene LeBell? Was it someone else? And then like the supposed story with Quentin and the stuntman or whatever, which has something to do with Gene LeBell. These things intersect a little bit. And so John Little, which is like why sometimes I have to pinch myself. Like, you know, when I was a teenager, I used to read the books that John Little would put out. And now I chat with him and like we kind of discuss Bruce Lee stuff.
Yeah, that's like if I hung out with Mike Tyson all day, every day, randomly.
Or if you had the chance to hang out with the Kung Fu genius in Hong Kong, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, same shit.
Yeah, same shit, right? And so anyway, John Little sent me like a 29-page document. discussing the entire thing about Bruce Lee and the stuntman and the set of being on the set of Green Hornet. And this is not just like John Little writing 29 pages. These are quotes from interviews. These are notes. And he cited all of his sources. I mean, a fair chunk of those 29 pages are just all the sources where he got everything from. Interviews with Van Williams and Gene LeBell and all this kind of stuff, right? So he sent it to me this weekend. I've read it like furiously a bunch of times. Yeah. But I want to talk about it a little bit. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but he did give me permission to kind of discuss it on the podcast. So I have it here in my notes because I want to make sure that like I don't miss anything.
Yeah.
And so I apologize for our viewers if I have to look down every now and again and you know, because this is not coming off of the top of my genius brain, right? Also, there's some quotes in here that I want to make sure that I get right. So anyway, let's kind of get into it. So this whole thing starts with Bruce Lee getting the role of Kato in Green Hornet, and in the photo behind us right there. And that also represented kind of like a stepping up for him, right? Because not only did he get an advance on some cash and stuff, but he also moved into like a pretty swanky apartment building. And John puts all that information. It was called the Barrington Plaza. It's 27 stories. But imagine back in the 60s, 27 stories. It was like supposedly one of the biggest, if not the biggest, west of Chicago at that point. Okay. And Bruce moves into this plaza. It's only 4 miles away from the TV studios where they're shooting Green Hornet, 20th Century or whatever. And Burt Ward, who played Robin in the Batman series, and Adam West, they also lived in that building, right? So, and apparently because Bruce was able to barter martial art lessons with one of the owners, he even got half off the rent there as well. And he was living, according to this, on the 23rd floor of 27. So and Bruce even had some in one of the letters.
Roller.
There's a quote in here, and Bruce even says, "I'll be living on the 23rd story. The higher, the more expensive. I'm telling you, it's something else." And it had like an Olympic pool, because this is from Bruce's words. He's from
Olympic
some letter.
Pool in the building.
Olympic pool, all wool carpeting, which in the 60s was a big deal. All electric kitchen, dishwasher, built-in range oven. In New York, you don't even get that stuff now, right? Laundry, dry cleaning, valet service, doorman, attendant parking. So, I mean, this was like a huge step up. Remember, just a couple years earlier, he was living at Ruby Chow's, working as a waiter.
Yeah.
And living with James Yim Lee in Oakland and stuff like that. And now suddenly, like, his life has changed, all right? So, and of course, Bruce wanted to represent Kung Fu well in the Green Hornet series, but he didn't like represent Wing Chun or any particular style. That's why if you ever watch a Green Hornet, he just says, you know, Kung Fu. He just does Kung Fu, right? So it allowed him to kind of like pull from whatever and kind of represent Chinese martial arts more eclectically rather than him, you know, doing any one style. And obviously, if you watch the fight scenes in the Green Hornet, they're a couple rare moments where he does some Wing Chun-y stuff, but for the most part, he's doing high kicks and round kicks and spinny stuff and round movements. So he was doing basically almost the opposite of what he was teaching his students and what he himself was practicing.
Okay.
But he understood what it was like to be a showman, right? Because he came from a background of making films when he was a kid. But as they started shooting the Green Hornet, there was a little problem. And the problem was that Bruce wanted to do everything basically full speed because that's his thing. Bruce is fast, speed is his thing. And he wanted to do everything really close to the stuntmen to make it look real.
Damn.
So as a result, in let's say the earliest of episodes, or maybe even in some of the test shoots, so before the Green Hornet really started getting going, he hit a couple stuntmen. And he, was having a little bit of a hard time adjusting to, because he had just done martial arts for real, and now he has to do martial arts for film, which is a totally different thing. And while people say, well, didn't Bruce work as an actor before? Yeah, but he wasn't doing action roles when he was a kid. He had some roles where there were some fights and stuff like that, but he was not a martial arts actor until he did Green Hornet. So there were some issues with him maybe hitting some stuntmen because he had to get a little bit too close. And obviously, American stuntmen were not used to that kind of speed. So their reactions were probably not really where they needed to be. Because if you know anything about stunt work, it's really the dude taking the hit that sells the whole action. Right? Because you could have a really fast and well-timed combination, but if the other guy stands there or reacts to the punch too late, it makes the person doing the punches look really bad. So all the punches and all the kicks need to be sold by the person receiving it. That's why stuntmen are so vital to fight choreography. Because it's the stuntman usually that's eating shit in the fight scene that makes the fight scene look good. The way he snaps or she snaps their head back or takes the fall or reacts to the punch. If you get a punch to the gut and you react with your head, it's going to look off. You have to react in the way someone would react if they got punched in the stomach, right? So
that's why I love Mr. T so much.
Because he had no reaction, all right? You punch him and he just went like this, right?
No, Rocky was legit. Like,
yeah,
I love that part.
But how well a stuntman can sell the other person's punch basically will determine the outcome of what the fight scene looks like. And the stuntmen were not fast enough to keep up with Bruce because they were, think about American stuntmen in the 60s. They're used to big old John Wayne punches and things like that. And so there was like a little bit of a problem. And the other issue was that because Bruce was so fast, it actually wasn't looking good on camera. Not that he was so fast you couldn't see it, but the problem is like the rules of making a fight look real on screen are the opposite of what makes a fight real in the street. Yeah. So it needs to be, you need to see, practical. You need to see the movements is the first thing. Otherwise the audience just sees a blur. And because the Green Hornet was shot in kind of a grainy way and Bruce wore black and he was really fast, that made it even harder to kind of see what he was doing exactly, right? So Van Williams, the guy who played the Green Hornet, his stuntman was a guy named Benny Dobbins.
Okay.
And Benny Dobbins had been Van Williams' stuntman for a while, and he trusted him.
I like that name, Benny Dobbins.
Benny Dobbins eventually became the actual stunt coordinator for Green Hornet.
Got it.
So he worked as a stuntman, but he was also the stunt coordinator. And when he saw this thing with Bruce kind of hitting some of the stuntmen didn't really want to work with Bruce after those first couple shots. But Benny also saw that the action wasn't really selling. As good as Bruce Lee was, the action wasn't selling. It was too fast. The stuntmen couldn't react in time. It didn't look good. And he was trying to get Bruce to do things slower and further away from the stuntmen, so there was more of a margin for safety, and they could see it and they could react to it. And Bruce wasn't really having it, because Bruce was, well, to be fair, Bruce was kind of green when it came to this thing. And he was butting heads with Benny a little bit. And so I'll read, this is just a quote, and this is a quote from Van Williams, all right?
All right.
So he talks about Benny Dobbins. He goes, Benny Dobbins was my stuntman. He was my stuntman almost from the beginning of my career. And then he goes on a little bit about how eventually he becomes the stunt coordinator for Green Hornet. And he, of course, they had to deal with this problem of Bruce Lee kind of knocking some of the stuntmen on their ass. And they didn't want to work with the show anymore. And it was and this was kind of a real working experience for both Bruce Lee and Benny Dobbins, like kind of coming from two different schools of thought. And he said that's why the tension grew, and it grew almost to the point where they got in a fight. And Van Williams says almost, it didn't happen because he got in the middle of it. And so that was like, that's a story that happened. And you can kind of see how now, 60 some odd years later, some things get mutated into something that it's not, right? But here's what ends up happening. Benny realized that he was kind of button heads telling Bruce how he should do these fight scenes, all right? Because one thing about fight scenes is, look, the camera is two-dimensional. So if this is my opponent's head, all right, or my opponent here, and I'm fighting for the camera, I can stand a little bit offset. So when I fire that punch, it goes to the side. Of course, this for those of you watching, you can see. For those on audio, I apologize. There's this much of a margin for safety of the punch and the head. So when this punch goes cross camera, this person just needs to sell that punch as landing, right? Yeah. And if he doesn't sell it or I miss, he doesn't get hit. So you leave these little gaps and things like that, right? Bruce didn't really understand that. He was like delivering the punches kind of as if he were really doing it and just maybe trying to pull it at the end, which is kind of impossible. And so Benny was having a hard time communicating to Bruce that you need to make the movements a little bit bigger, you need to be a little further away, and actually you need to do them a little bit slower so that the audience can see it. So he came up with this idea, and this was kind of after they had butted heads a little bit, because he realized he wasn't going to convince Bruce Lee by imposing his will. He said they would do 2 test shoots. And so they were like, okay, we'll do it your way, Bruce, and then later we'll do it my way, and you tell me which one looks better on screen. So actually it was very, for Bruce Lee being the philosophical one, like Benny was the one kind of pulling some, verbal Tai Chi on Bruce Lee in this kind of situation here, right? So they do it Bruce Lee's way, and then they look at the dailies, which is, they look at the shots in there, and Bruce could finally kind of see that, like, that speed and that it didn't quite look good. And then Benny was able to convince Bruce that by keeping a little bit more distance, doing things a little more slowly, and giving the stuntmen a little bit more time to react to the cues and to the action, that the whole thing would look better. And Bruce finally came to. And so after that, Bruce and Benny actually got along really well. And then they ended up, becoming pretty tight, according to Van Williams. So this thing about there being any tension was like something very early in the beginning, when Bruce was having some growing pains, adjusting martial arts for real to martial arts, in the on TV, right? But that was already pretty much solved, I think, by the first episode or second episode at the latest. So this was already something that was taken care of. And then kind of from then on, at least from the recollections of Van Williams, that was no longer a problem, right? Okay. So that was kind of the first, that was kind of like the first thing, right? And then so, of course, now we enter Tarantino's story, okay? Because Tarantino claimed that Benny Dobbins, all right, the Benny that we're talking about, called Gene LeBell, because Gene LeBell was a stuntman at that time, and wanted Gene to, quote unquote, teach Bruce a lesson. Okay? So this is the Tarantino story, right? And so what Tarantino is doing is he's latching on to this true fact that at the very, very early stage of Green Hornet, there was a little bit of tension between Bruce and some of the stuntmen. But he kind of made it seem like this was an ongoing thing and that this was like a bigger problem than it actually was. And so, now suddenly he calls Gene LeBell in to come and teach Bruce a lesson, which, first of all, if you understand how the film industry or the TV industry works, it's all about connections. And if you are a stunt coordinator on a TV show, and don't forget, Bruce Lee is the co-star of the Green Hornet.
Yeah.
And you call in one of your stunt buddies to rough up the co-star, I have news for you. You're probably not going to have a job after that happens. No. All right? I mean, think about it. I mean, we're adults here. Think about it. You're the stunt coordinator. Uh-huh. You bring one of your stunt buddies to come in and rough up the co-star of the show when you're just the stunt coordinator, which last time I checked in the pecking order is lower than the co-star. All right? Maybe it shouldn't be. I have nothing but respect for stuntmen, but that's the case. Mm-hmm. To do something like that would be akin to, this would be like suicide for your career, or at least for that particular job. So already there's something a little off. Plus, if we look into like the other things that people have said about Bruce Lee and his treatment of stuntmen, especially on like the set of Enter the Dragon and the set of his other Chinese movies, the stuntmen loved Bruce Lee. And this is not hyperbole. This is not me pulling this out of my ass. All right, you can see interviews with Jackie Chan, with Sammo Hung, with Yuen Wah, all of these guys who worked with Bruce Lee, who will say how Bruce was like, he would fight Raymond Chow to give the stuntmen better food. Mm-hmm. And when they would call cut, like on the set of Enter the Dragon, Bruce didn't go into his trailer or into his office. He stayed there and he hung out with the stuntmen because Bruce knew that it's the stuntmen that make everyone look good. Now, could it be that Bruce learned that lesson on Green Hornet? Absolutely, all right? But one thing we know is that Bruce had a tremendous amount of respect for stuntmen. And I also know this out of my own personal experience because 3 years ago, the last time I was in Hong Kong, I met Siu Hao from the Mad Monkey Kung Fu from the Shaw Brothers fame, and Zheng Wenghon, who's a stuntman who's been in movies. He was in Enter the Dragon. He's one of the extras. But he had been in Jackie Chan movies, and he's a veteran stuntman. And I sat there, and he was telling stories, and the subject of Bruce Lee came up. And he said, so I'm going to be careful about what I say because he also mentioned other people. So I'm going to do an edited version of the statement. He says, he's worked for a number of people, meaning big stars. But he says, the one that cared about the stuntmen the most was Bruce Lee. And who took care of them and fought for them to have better wages and better food and all this kind of stuff. So this idea that Quentin then said that Bruce hated American stuntmen doesn't seem to ring true to his treatment of stuntmen in general, at least later. Now, look, I understand someone could say, well, maybe Bruce was different earlier, and maybe because they were Westerners, he looked at it differently. But I don't think so. This was Bruce Lee's first gig in Hollywood. Yeah. His first gig.
Straight green.
So he's going to go in there and cause conflicts with the people who are basically keeping him employed. This doesn't really make sense, okay? Mm-hmm. What seems to make sense is that there was obviously some misunderstanding with how Bruce was doing things. That got corrected, and then after that, that wasn't an issue, right? Because Bruce, very much cared for stuntmen, at least later in life. So I have a hard time to believe that was really how he was back then, right? Plus, also, Quentin, as I've said multiple times on this podcast previously, Quentin, in his direct quote, was that, and I'm going to see if I can find that here, that he hated American stuntmen, all right? Which, of course, then Quentin forgets. Bruce Lee was American. All right? So, I mean, does he mean Western? Is he trying to now make Bruce racist or something like that? Like is that like the plot? Because his depiction of Bruce as this kind of blowhard and jackass, he got blowback as like, this is a very racist depiction of Asian people, right? So is his then sly thing to say, well, actually, Bruce Lee was racist. He was racist towards the poor white guys who were hiring him. All right? So I have, it's like, shut up. All right, just shut up. That's a dumb point, right?
Damn.
So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. So then Gene LeBell tells this story that he was there, Quentin tells the story that Gene LeBell was hired to come and teach Bruce a lesson, right? Now, of course, I already talked a little bit about Gene LeBell, about him being a legit dude. I mean, this is not someone who's a fake martial artist or anything like that. This guy was absolutely legit. But according to Gene LeBell's autobiography, Benny Dobbins, placed a phone call to LeBell and asked him to come to 20th Century lot to set Bruce straight. According to LeBell, Lee was a working stiff on the set of Green Hornet, but was kicking the shit out of the stuntmen. And they couldn't convince him that he could go easy and it would still look great on film. The show's stunt coordinator, Benny Dobbins, needed a ringer to deal with Lee, and so he called in Judo Gene. So this is also coming out of like LeBell's camp or whatever, right?
Okay.
And the problem is that Gene LeBell has also contradicted his own stories a little bit as well, and so we'll get into that in a moment. Like, so there's a couple things, like, and now I'm kind of reading off a little bit about what John Little gave me here. So there are a couple things that, you know, don't ring quite true under a little bit of scrutiny. And so one, LeBell claimed in interviews that he ended up working in the Green Hornet doing a lot of shows. However, when you go to IMDb, Gene LeBell was on one episode of Green Hornet. And it was like the 11th episode.
Okay.
And that was it. He worked with Bruce on another show where he played a judo instructor. But in terms of being like regularly on the Green Hornet, well, at least he didn't get credit for it. Now, is IMDb always 100% accurate in the credits and stuff like that?
I think they are.
They're not. No, you missed my Vincent Lin episode. We went through his IMDb, and there was 25% of the movies on his IMDb he wasn't even in.
Okay.
So there is that. So, I mean, you can also say that IMDb might not be accurate, but being that it's because it's Bruce and it's Gene, you know, when it comes to these special interest topics, usually people who are fans go into IMDb and make sure those things are correct. Mm-hmm. So if Gene LeBell had been in a bunch of episodes of Green Hornet, I'm pretty sure some Bruce Lee nerd who knew what episodes those were would have fixed it. But alas, according to IMDb, Gene LeBell is in one episode, apparently the 11th episode, right? Mm-hmm. So, and there were 26 episodes altogether, just to give you an idea. And so, you know, according to John's notes, it would be kind of strange that if Bruce was kicking the shit out of all the stuntmen, episode after episode, that Benny wouldn't call in some help until the 11th episode. After they're probably losing stuntmen left and right who don't want to. By the 11th episode, finally, it's like bring in Judo Gene, right? Plus, not to mention the whole thing about, like, this would be a very dubious thing to do as a stunt coordinator, to bring someone in to teach the co-star a lesson and then expect that you're going to keep your job. Yeah. Like, this doesn't ring true, right? And so, of course, and by those early episodes, Dobbins and Bruce had already figured out the choreography and how to do this stuff, right? So it wasn't even really a problem. So, but the problem is that Gene LeBell has also said something else. And so on another occasion, you know, on one occasion in his book, he said it was to teach Bruce Lee a lesson. On another occasion, he said that this is Gene LeBell's quote, Benny Dobbins was stunt coordinator for the show, and he called me to ask me to check out some kid by the name of Bruce Lee. I got this guy who does the same stuff you do, Dobbins said. Of course, Benny didn't know the difference between judo and kung fu, but he wanted me to watch this new actor work. So in another interview, that's what Gene LeBell says about what Benny told him or whatever, right? So already we start to see that there's some discrepancy about like what Gene LeBell's actual account is. And then it would change again a few years later. And LeBell said something like, Bruce Lee demanded respect. And Benny Dobbins, the stunt coordinator, the guy who hired me, he says, well, tease the guy a little bit. And that's what stunt guys do, and make him part of the family. So he says, well, pick him up. So then the idea was that he was going to tease Bruce Lee a little bit and like pick him up in a fireman's carry kind of like welcome him into the stunt family. So already when you look at Gene LeBell's accounts, one account, he was hired to teach Bruce Lee a lesson. 2, he was brought on the set just to check out this kid, Bruce Lee. And the third one, he was there to welcome
Initiate
Bruce,
him.
initiate him into the stunt family, even though Bruce is not a stunt actor, he's the main actor, and pick him up. So you start to go, well, which one is it? Is it all 3 of these things? Because there seems to be something that's a little...
all 3 times.
There
and did
seems
this.
to be something that's a little bit off here, right?
Okay.
So you also have to think about, like, why he was really invited onto the set. Like, he's going to welcome... Is he there to welcome Bruce Lee by, like, some good-natured teasing? Or is he there to teach Bruce Lee respect for American stuntmen? And so later, LeBell basically, you know, there's a story that, like, the lesson that he was going to teach him was he just grabbed him and put him in a headlock and Bruce couldn't get out of it. That's one story. Another story was that he put Bruce in a crouching Nelson. And the funny thing is, John Little looked it up and I looked at even his grappling buddies don't know what the hell a crouching Nelson is, right? And then eventually it's a fireman's carry. Okay? And supposedly LeBell just goes, grabs Bruce. Bruce puts Bruce in a fireman's carry, and he says Bruce did all those funny yells that he does. And then he's up there, and he says, "Hey, let me down. I'm gonna kill you." And then Gene LeBell says, "Well, I can't let you down because then you're gonna kill me."
Okay.
And then like walks him across the studio set or whatever. And Bruce is just there like a child on Gene LeBell's back or something like that, right?
Okay.
And then that's the actual story that LeBell says that he kind of put him in a fireman's carry. So I don't necessarily think that actually happened, but let's say it did. So was that the lesson? So even if you then actually listen to what LeBell said that he did, so he was going to teach Bruce a lesson to respect American stuntmen, and he picks him up, I guess so easily, and walks him across the studio, and that was the lesson?
I guess that is a lesson.
All right, and that set Bruce Lee straight? Or whatever? Like it seems a little weird, right? It seems a little like
playful.
Well, it also just seems like LeBell doesn't have his story straight when it comes to this stuff, right? So that's like that already. The mixed accounting seems to be a little bit of an issue, right? So then we get into this whole thing about Bruce then saw after this amazing fireman's carry that the thing that was missing in his arsenal was judo, which, by the way, like a fireman's carry is not really a judo technique from what I understand. Like, well, you have to
It's a
think
fireman's technique.
Yeah, but it's like, can you imagine, like, I pick up someone with a fireman's carry, and then they're like, oh, the thing I need to learn now is Wing Chun, because the Wing Chun guy put me in a fireman's carry, right? It's like kind of weird, right?
Shit.
So then LeBell claims that basically immediately after this incident, if you can call it that, Bruce started learning grappling with Gene for 1 year. And even according to Gene, he did it when no one was around and no one saw. Which is okay, maybe understandable. Bruce Lee's a movie star. Bruce Lee's also a martial arts instructor. Maybe he doesn't want other people to watch him learning or whatever. Like I'm trying to always tell the story as fair as possible. Obviously, I'm partial to Bruce Lee and I'm a Bruce Lee fan, but I don't want to just run over any potential of there being another way to explain this. But then the problems begin with that whole thing, that Gene LeBell had taught Bruce Lee for a year, privately when no one was around.
Yeah.
And the big problem with that is Bruce kept meticulous day timers. All right. His and I also basically have a day timer, which is your daily schedule. Back then, before you had an iPhone with all your appointments and everything in there, Bruce wrote everything down in these small little day timers with the date and what he did. And Bruce was very meticulous about these, right? He would write his training sessions, he would write meetings that he would have. He would even write like he's going to shop at the store to buy pants. So like he would even write notes about like what he was going to do. He would write his doctor's appointments. He would write like when he trained with Chuck Norris, and then later he would go back and write what he had done with Chuck Norris in Chinese, and it would be like chi sao.
Some notes. Okay.
So John Little can quite frankly just look at what Bruce was doing day to day.
Okay.
And there is not one mention of Gene LeBell or grappling training in any of Bruce's day timers, which really he started to write. he had daytimers, I think, on and off, and had little diaries here and there. But really, from 1966 to 1973, so the time he died. Although the last year, I think his daytimer was kind of sparse for maybe different reasons.
Damn.
But he was very detailed in those daytimers, and there is no mention of Bruce. With Gene LeBell, there's mentions of him meeting June Rhee. There's mentions of it with Joe Louis. All these other things. There's nothing in there about Gene LeBell. So this secret training that Bruce was having, Bruce was also keeping this secret from his daytimer.
So he wanted to keep it a secret.
He wanted to keep it a secret, right?
Yeah.
It was such a secret
From
right?
himself, too.
And from himself. And the weird thing is, like, Bruce was so into this stuff. He did it for a year. But then it didn't really factor too much into his Jeet Kune Do training and what he was teaching. And Bruce was a very open instructor about, like, doing different things and stuff. And, like, do you think maybe he would then have his guys doing all sorts of judo hip tosses and arm cranks and all this stuff that he's learning from LeBell, but he didn't. So it seems dubious in that there's no record of Bruce learning from Gene LeBell. And whatever he was learning from Gene, if he in fact was learning from Gene, didn't really seem to factor in too much into what he was doing. Now, some people might say, well, maybe he was just learning it for himself as a secret weapon in case one of his students tried to grab him or something like that. But again, the problem is, in order to explain away Gene LeBell's story, you need to create these assumptions. Like, oh, maybe he was keeping it a secret, and maybe he didn't want anyone to know. But the problem is, when you follow Occam's razor, which is that the true story is most likely the one where you make the least assumptions. In order for Gene LeBell's story, which has no record or proof, to hold up, you have to now go, well, then this probably happened. You have to have all these handful of assumptions for that to potentially be true. Whereas, quite honestly, there's actually no evidence that it happened. He was in one episode of Green Hornet, and they worked together. I don't know, was it Ironsides or Here Come the Blondes? It was some TV show where Bruce was a kind of a judo instructor, and he tosses Gene, and Gene tosses him, and they go back and forth. But there's really not a whole lot of evidence that the two of them really spent that much time together.
Damn.
So, and moreover, right after this supposed incident happened, Gene LeBell, Bruce is like, oh, well, you got to come and train at my dojo or whatever, which is already suspect because Bruce would not have called his school a dojo. Now, mind you, all right, Gene LeBell probably could have forgotten that, and Gene LeBell, like many Americans, probably assumed that all martial arts schools are called a dojo.
Yeah.
All right. By the way, all right, because I get this all the time. You know how many messages I get? Can I come and train at your dojo? Or what's the schedule at your dojo? And just like the hairs on my head just stand up, all right? Dojo is a Japanese word, all right?
When your family says,
yes,
you're still teaching karate.
That's right. When my Cuban family goes, oh, Alice, how'd you karate school?
right.
Yeah, my old Cuban cousins and stuff. Alice, you teach karate. Yes, and but it's to the point now I don't correct any of my Cuban family. Like when they say, like, how's your karate school going? I'm going, great. Alice, what belt you have? I don't know what color it is anymore, right? But yeah.
It's pink, it's faded.
At some point you stop correcting people, right? So then again, we hear that he goes, oh, Bruce wanted him to come over to his school and start teaching him there right away. The problem is that in 66, Bruce had not yet opened his school yet. He didn't open his school later until 67, the Chinatown school, I believe. And Judo Gene further goes on to say when he went to Bruce's school, Bruce had very thin tatami mats, like a half inch. And he said, oh, you would break your ass if you fell on those things. Except the problem is...
What's the problem with that?
Bruce had concrete floors in his school.
Oh, damn.
Okay. Steve Golden, whom I've also met, told John Little this, right?
I can see them mixed up with that.
Bruce didn't use mats, all right? And then Gene also claimed that Bruce's school smelt of incense, all right? And there's also a little bit of a feeling like Gene was kind of making a joke that it smelled like weed because Bruce was smoking weed.
Yeah.
But also maybe he just meant incense, and like Steve Golden was like, no, we never burnt any incense there. And I don't think that Bruce, who may have already been smoking weed at that time, I don't think he was doing it at his martial arts school, okay? I don't think so.
During class, like...
In public when he's a TV guy. Get out of here, all right? In the six, shut up, all right?
Sitting down like,
so
man.
the problem is, already Gene LeBell's story falls apart. Even if his recollection is a little hazy, because it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
the just straight facts of it can't actually
Maybe
be
it
true.
was concrete to
All
Tommy
right?
Matz.
Concrete to Tommy, right?
I love
And then
that
eventually, then he goes over to Gene LeBell's school and learns from him there secretly, where no one else sees. None of Gene's people see it.
Damn.
And that's it. Okay? So,
Bruce Lee's good at keeping secrets, though.
yeah, people are great at keeping secrets, right? And so that's kind of the broad strokes thing about it. Like, this whole that there was a stuntman who was going to teach Bruce a lesson. That doesn't seem to hold water.
Mm-hmm.
The story doesn't make sense. Bruce and Benny were actually getting along fine. That Gene LeBell
Benny Dobbins.
would come in to cause some problems or whatever doesn't make any sense. And this whole thing that Gene was teaching Bruce Lee grappling, there's literally no evidence. Bruce had done some judo, like we mentioned earlier, with Jesse Glover earlier, back in the Seattle days. And there's really not much evidence that he had done it beyond that. But Bruce already had some idea about judo and throws and things like that or whatever. So it's the story falls apart. Now, what we also know about Gene LeBell, I don't want to get into it too much. If you guys want to watch, there's a YouTube channel out there called Viking Samurai. I love watching him, right? He's big into the Van Damme stuff and 80s action movies. And he interviewed, I think the guy's name was Stephen Lambert.
Okay.
Or it's not Adam, Stephen, right? And he's an old school stuntman and stunt coordinator. He was in like the old Cannon movies and all that kind of stuff. And there's a story that supposedly Judo Gene LeBell choked out Steven Seagal on the set of, I don't know, it was Marked for Death or Under Siege, whatever. One of those. Out for Justice, all right?
One of
and
those.
that, he chokes him out because Steven Seagal says he can't be choked out because his magical key or whatever. And Gene LeBell, whose thing is choking people out, chokes Steven Seagal out, and Steven Seagal craps in his pants in front of, while he's passed out, right? And so this was standard lore for the longest time. Like, I believe the story. I heard it. Like,
Okay.
A lot of martial artists don't really like Steven Seagal because he said a lot of weird shit. So for the longest time, I was like, yeah, I hope Gene LeBell had choked him out and made him crap his pants because that guy's a tool, right?
Yeah.
And then
He deserved it.
And then, oddly enough, in the weirdest and most typical of Kung Fu Genius stories, I end up speaking to Steven Seagal on the telephone while I'm on the toilet. So, which is just a crazy story. And he called me Sifu
The
Richter.
irony.
He called me Sifu Richter, and I call him Sensei Seagal. And he did not know I was sitting on the toilet. So apparently, is a very fitting way to talk to Steven Seagal. So yeah, so there's this story about Judo Gene choking out Steven Seagal, right? And but apparently, that story, which everyone accepted, that story wasn't even true.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this on the Viking Samurai channel, you can see Stephen Lambert tells the whole story. He was there. He witnessed the incident. And it was like Stephen was talking about techniques. Like if someone tries to choke you, you can do this and do that. And then, Gene LeBell's like, well, you want to try that on me kind of thing. And he goes behind him and Steven Seagal basically hits Gene LeBell in the groin. And Gene LeBell jumps up and then kind of grabs him and unceremoniously tosses Steven Seagal to the ground.
Right.
And then it gets kind of broken up. And that was kind of it. And then because the stuntmen didn't really seem to like Steven Seagal, this story kind of gets cooked up that, he got choked out and he crapped his pants and it was super embarrassing. And Gene LeBell never denied it.
So like the sin of omission again,
It's
basically.
the sin of omission, right? So then, when you look at certain behavior patterns, Gene LeBell is a great self-promoter.
Right.
All right?
Yeah.
And he knows damn well he didn't choke out Steven Seagal. But he doesn't say anything, even though probably would be the nicer thing to do, given that they both work in the industry. He says nothing. And then so you have to then wonder, someone who can do that, so what else is he hiding? Or what else is he not being honest about his relationship with Bruce Lee or with any of these other guys? So.
Right, yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I think when I read about it, I think the thing he said in at least one of his interviews was something along the lines of, well, there were 30 other people around there, so I'll let them speak on it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's how he kind of skates with, knowing full well that those people will probably be like, yeah, he shit his pants. Right?
Absolutely. Of course.
So anyway,
yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about it. I got all this great information. Now, by the way, I didn't do all the information that John Little gave me any justice. I just went through a couple bullet points, but it's pretty amazing how thorough he was about it, and that this whole Gene LeBell thing, teaching Bruce a lesson, seems to be total unqualified bullshit. Quentin Tarantino's story is just also complete bullshit that this is based in any kind of fact. And then also this whole thing about Bruce actually learning from Gene LeBell. There's just no evidence.
Doesn't hold
There's
up.
just no evidence. So anyway,
Damn.
now that we're almost an hour into it, give me a question. Like, we got some questions. Hey, Kung Fu Genius listeners, if you're looking for an easy way to support this podcast, please consider joining the Kung Fu Genius Patreon. You can support for as little as $5 a month and get access to episodes a few days early. Higher levels of support get additional goodies, exclusive content, and even your name in the description. The baller level of support will give you the opportunity to be a Dre for a day and give me a rest from this guy over here. A link for the Kung Fu Genius Patreon page is in the description below. You can also support us by subscribing to the Kung Fu Genius on YouTube, liking this video, and sharing it on your social media platforms. When you subscribe on YouTube, don't forget to hit that bell for notifications so you will know as soon as a new episode or a premiere is available for you to watch. For those of us who listen to us on audio, it's a huge help if you don't just rate the podcast, but also write a review wherever you listen to the Kung Fu Genius, such as Apple or Google Podcasts. I really appreciate it. And now back to me.
Okay, I think we have a question. First up, we got Christian Creasy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, our dude.
Another return questioner.
Oh, man. He says, great episode, number 51.
51. Okay. All right. Good. That was the one before the season finale.
Right.
Yeah, I have no idea what's on that.
All right. I hope everyone at City Wing Chun is having a great new year so far. Okay.
So far.
Thank you. So far, so good. 2 questions.
Okay.
Do you believe that more WT students and instructors should train more in the basic fight stance, meaning boxing and kickboxing stance, after they learn basic Wing Chun stance? Honestly, I believe one in real life fighting or fight in character 2 stance.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it depends on how you learn. It depends on the instructor. The problem is that WT as a specific lineage has long since stopped being a cohesive, standardized brand of Wing Chun.
Mm-hmm.
And now when you say WT Wing Chun or Leung Ting Wing Chun, that it's so varied throughout the world
Mm-hmm.
that it's almost meaningless to say what is. I mean, we have an idea of what Leung Ting Wing Chun is from the Hong Kong side of things, or at least some people do. But like when you just say WT, the WT is so varied under the sun that I don't know, right? Now, is it a good idea for, like, you know, maybe senior students to learn how to move around using some non-Wing Chun footwork and maybe apply Wing Chun using kind of a boxing or kickboxing frame? Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to learn, I don't think that that's a bad idea. Mm-hmm. And I'm totally okay with that. But the different schools of WT have different ways of teaching and interpreting and different things that they focus on. So far be it from me to say what most WT people should do, because quite honestly, when I look at WT throughout the world, as someone who learned both in Europe and directly from Sifu Leung Ting, I also don't understand most of the WT that I see online. I look at it and I go, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't tell you.
You don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I look at like what some of the Wong Sa Leung guys are doing, and that is much more in line with what I learned from my Hong Kong instructors than what some of the so-called WT people who have big accounts or whatever are doing. Like, I look at that and I go, I don't know what that is. I find I have more in common with some of the other more Hong Kong-based lineages than what people who are supposedly doing WT are doing. So,
Darn. All right, second question.
Okay.
Fun question.
Oh, God, here we go. Fun for who?
I guess this is a hypothetical.
Oh, God, here's a hypothetical.
Oh, no.
If you had to pick 3 people from City Wing Chun to fight against Iron Fist, Daredevil, and Captain America, who would you pick?
Christ.
Yourself included, too.
Wow.
Well, that's not how that works, is it? You pick one of us. You're like the last person at the end if we all lose.
Well, if pick myself, okay, obviously I'm one of those, right?
Yeah, you got to be in there.
Can I make 2 of Arnell?
2 Arnells, yes.
All right.
2. So yourself and 2 Arnells.
Yes.
Yes,
that would be
makes
my
sense.
that would be my dream team. Arnell is one of my senior students.
Yeah.
He's Filipino.
Yeah.
He's built like Maui from Moana.
Yeah.
All right.
He's a banger.
He's the proverbial brick shithouse. All right. You are not moving him. All right.
But he moves so
But
like
he moves fast.
fluid.
Yes,
and,
yes.
And just like
Yeah. Built like it, but like Sammo Hung said, built like an elephant but moves like a monkey. All right. I would basically just have him grab me from behind and him throw me into whoever, and then I would kick them and then he would come in right after behind me, right?
Oh, that's great.
I just couldn't imagine just like you just sat at the back while there's two of him directly in front
smashing everyone, right?
Like Arnell smash, like that would be scary.
Yeah, he's our Hulk.
how could you? Yeah, he's definitely two Hulks. I mean, that'd be dope.
Pretty much.
Two Hulks against Iron Fist, Daredevil, and Captain America.
Yeah.
We
Is it the Iron Fist from the Netflix series? Because
one would hope so.
I could probably send my daughters after him. That guy sucked. That guy sucked so bad.
Yes. Stay away, bad guy.
You know, the stunt coordinator for that Iron Fist was going to set up that guy to train with me originally. And then he ends up training with someone else and then not really training.
What a dumb move.
I'm so happy that... No, I'm actually happy he ended up not training with me. Because, it turned out that even the guy he later trained with, he was kind of lazy. And not the guy that trained him, but the actor.
Yeah.
And so no one wants to put their name on, I trained this guy for Iron Fist, which was like the worst out of all those shows. The guy sucked. He didn't even try.
Oh, Don.
Yeah, what's next?
All right. Serge Bilen.
All right.
Hi, Richter Sifu.
That's what's up.
All right. Every week I look forward to your podcast, instructive and amusing at the same time.
Good.
I regularly do some research on the evolution history of Wing Chun.
Uh-oh.
I have often found that in past this is a big one, so I'm trying to speed it up a little.
Okay.
Past there was only one big original form, which was later split into 3 parts, our well-known 3 hands forms, or hand forms. But now I find more and more that it was actually split into 4 hand forms, the Sunum Tao, the Cham Kyu, the Buzi, and the Chai Jong Kyun. Chai Jong Kyung, the Wooden Fist.
The Wooden Fist.
The Wooden Fist.
Yeah,
That's
I love
my
Wooden
favorite
Fist,
one.
Yeah.
According to students...
Better than Iron Fist.
Way better. Top notch. According to students of the Chung So lineage, Yip Man's teachers did not pass this on to him, but apparently did to Chung So. A certain Sifu Fok Chiu, student of both Yoi Choi and Leung Fok of the Chung So lineage, is so wild for me right now, then did show this to Sijo Leung Toing. Learn Ting.
Your mouth is all twisted.
I know.
after Chinese word salad.
Leung Toing.
Yeah.
This form would apparently possess extremely valuable step, work, and movement patterns, which in turn refer to the patterns for the tripodal dummy, but especially the use of plum flower stakes. Have you ever read anything about that? Greetings, Serge.
No, this sounds like the kind of stuff that gets made up in Europe. All right? Because you know the game of telephone?
Love that game.
I tell you something, you tell that guy.
Yeah.
That guy tells that guy.
Yeah.
All right? So anything like about like the history
no
of
phone ring at all.
Anything about the history of Wing Chun or this style, that style, by the time it ends up somewhere in Europe, it's like a dude who told a dude who told a dude who told a dude who told a dude who heard Sifu Leung Ting tell a dude. Okay? And then what's left of that story is then told as if that is absolutely true. All right? So, first of all, the idea that there was one big long Wing Chun form that later got split into 3 parts, that is something that I think has been propagated by Hendrik Santo, and also Jim Rosolando talked about it in my Sunum Tao book, where he talks a little bit about the Siu Lin Tao form, which was like this one really long form. It had more internal aspects, and like the first section of it was Sunum Taui, the second part was kind of Chum Kiwi, and then the last part was kind of Buji-like, and then that got split later, maybe in the 1850s during the Red Boat phase. I mean, look, who the hell knows? All right, there are no written records, and the written records we have are interpreted by people who sometimes have a vested interest in you believing certain things because it happens to be the lineage that they're selling to you, right? So Chinese martial arts history, and Wing Chun history in particular, is a hot dumpster fire of garbage, okay? And so, who knows? Who knows? Because a bunch of Chinese people said something, and this guy said this, and this guy said this, and this guy showed this. All right? The problem is that there's still this kind of idea that the reason why you're not this amazing banger of a fighter, like you know Wing Chun, you might be good in Wing Chun, but the reason why you're not like superhero anime level in Wing Chun is because you didn't learn that secret fourth form. That they didn't want it. They didn't even want Yip Man to know it. All right, man. It's so secret even Yip Man didn't know it. But you know what? His Siangs, like Chung So and those guys, they know it. All right.
Damn.
Now, tell me something, Dre. Who's the most famous of all the Wing Chun people? Of all the Wing Chun grandmasters?
I'm probably...
It's a guy named IP Man, Yip Man, right?
Yeah, probably him.
Now, does that mean that he was the only one who knew the whole Wing Chun style? No, there are people who say Yip Man didn't even know the whole Wing Chun or the real Wing Chun or the real Wing Chun is this. But who says those things? The people who come from the other Wing Chun. Okay? And so if the youngest student of Chun Ma Shun, namely Yip Man, becomes the most famous, what do you think of his seniors who maybe didn't become so famous? What they think or what their students think or their grand students think all those years after. They feel like their Sifu or their Si Gong or their Si Tai Gong or whatever, who was Yip Man Senior, is getting snubbed in the history books. So guess what? Yip Man didn't know this one form.
Nah.
Meanwhile,
the wooden fist.
Where are the fighting exploits of these other lineages? What, did they produce a Wong Sun Leung? Did they produce a Bruce Lee? Did they produce all these excellent disciples who went out and did something? No. They have a form that no one has ever seen. And because you haven't seen it, it's super secret. And that form is going to make you a really good fighter, all right? I'll put someone in a boxing gym for 6 months. Come at me with your wooden fist form, all right? Out of here with that bullshit. Out of here. A form is going to make you a special fighter. A form, all right? Only thing that matters is what you can do. And what form you can do. This is bullshit. Until Wing Chun people and Chinese martial arts practitioners wake up to this fact, all right? We're going to constantly have this, but the reason why that guy can't stop an MMA guy is because he didn't learn, the maple syrup fist. It's like, get out of here, right? Get out of here with that nonsense. No. Get out of here with that nonsense. I'm so tired of that. I love Chinese martial arts, but it's exactly these kind of attitudes that keep Chinese martial arts in the freaking dark ages. All right? And this is the problem. All right? I love Chinese Kung Fu. I love Wing Chun. But I also love other martial arts, and I also like to keep a very open mind about things. All right? I hate most attitudes that come from the Kung Fu side of things. The attitudes that are so prevalent in Chinese martial arts just remind me of religious zealotry. And it's tiresome. And it's embarrassing because I'm guilty by association, because I'm thrown into the camp as these guys who believe that there's... And I'm not saying that's the case with the person who wrote the question. Yeah. He's asking us a legitimate question about something he heard. But these things are propagated because of these bullshit beliefs. Anyway. Damn. Got time for one more?
Believe we do.
What about two more?
Two more. All right. We got Harold Tan.
Awesome.
Hello, sir. Absolutely loving the content.
Great.
Okay.
That's why we do it.
I would like to ask if you have had any exchanges with non-Yip Man lineages out there. What were they like, and how have you shaped your views on Wing WC now? Thanks.
Oh, well, I practice WT. Not just kidding, all right? I know people are very big on that. It's like, how did you improve your Wing Chun? They spelled CHUN. It's like, sir, I do WT, all right? Just like Wong Sun Leung or Moyat people, like they spell it VT. It's like, I don't do that WIGCHUN stuff. No, I get what they're saying, but actually, Dre, I answered this exact question a few episodes ago.
I feel like
talk about Jim Rosalando. I trained with him or whatever. So I don't
was
want.
Was this a repeat of the same actual Harold Tan question?
You are the one who's in charge of the questions. Why are you asking me?
Interesting.
We have already answered a similar question.
Moving right along.
All right, moving right along.
Andrew Lynn is asking.
Andrew Lynn.
Any thoughts on martial arts shoes? I did a deep dive on. I'm gonna try this one. The Feiyu, the Feiyu.
Feiyu.
I did a deep dive on the Feiers shoes as well as minimalist barefoot shoes recently, and was curious what types of shoes you think are best for training Wing Chun, if it even matters that much, and what some of your favorite shoes are for martial arts.
Well, it might sound self-serving, but the shoes that I like best for Wing Chun are the shoes that we wear. Actually, I talked about this just this past Saturday, so 2 days ago, on the on our monthly theory class, because I do a monthly live Q&A class. People can go to citywt.com to sign up for it. You can get a monthly subscription, and it's one Saturday every month. I do a live Q&A thing. So for about 15 minutes or so, I'll do like a topic. Like the last topic, I talked about chain kicks and why we even have them.
Nice.
And so I'll talk about a topic for like 15 minutes. Like I'll give a little mini TED talk. And then after that, I just take questions from the people who are there. So it's a similar idea to what we do here in the AMA episodes. But because those are all Wing Chun practitioners, the questions are much more like training methods and how do you do this and what about this application and what, as opposed to we get a lot of broad general questions here on this podcast. So I do that once a month, and if people get a subscription, they can do the live class every month and they can ask me all these questions, but also with the subscription they get access to all the previous recordings. And we've been doing this now for almost 2 years. So there is like there's almost 20 something episodes of this where it's an hour and 15 minutes of me just talking about stuff, history and training and all this kind of stuff in crazy detail. So I actually answered this question on the last one. And so basically, I like the Wing Chun shoes that we use in WT. They have a soft suede sole. And what that allows you to do is when you're learning how to turn and when you're learning how to step, they slide enough that you can learn the footwork correctly because they don't give you a lot of resistance. Whereas if you're doing them in big, sticky, clunky Nikes, you're going to be kind of clotting and plodding all over the place because your feet are going to be gripping too much, right?
Okay.
So in terms of
Can't
developing...
do them in Jordans.
Yeah, in terms of developing the Wing Chun skill, the steps, all that kind of stuff, the slide step and the turn and all those kind of things, it's better to have shoes that facilitate that. So the Wing Chun shoes with the soft suede sole, they're basically Kung Fu shoes, the V-taper Kung Fu shoes, but they don't have the crappy plastic soles or those really bad cotton soles like the ones you buy in Chinatown. They have this suede leather sole, all right, or fake pig leather or something like that.
All right.
And those work really well. There's another added benefit for that is that you can kick your partner using controlled power, and it doesn't hurt as much as if you kick them with your frickin' Jordans. Even if you're trying to use controlled force, it's like plunk. Or, which is very common in Wing Chun, we step on our opponent's foot. So those soft shoes that we have allow you to step on your partner's foot without them absolutely hating you afterwards. If you're doing that in your big Air Jordans or whatever, you do that twice, all right? Or your Timberlands or something like that, right?
Okay.
So I find that the Wing Chun shoes are actually really good for teaching the proper turning and shifting and advancing step and all that kind of stuff. However, there's a caveat. If you use those Wing Chun shoes on like a hardwood floor, or a hard plastic floor, they're too slippery. Because then the liability is, especially in Wing Chun when we do sparring, the bad guy is always doing non-Wing Chun. All right? Because they're like one person's Wing Chun, the other person's non-Wing Chun. Because Wing Chun versus Wing Chun sparring doesn't unless it's Chi Sao or Guo Sao, it doesn't make any sense. Two people standing in a Zhong Sao across from each other, it's like you go first, no, you go first. It doesn't make any sense. And this does not show what would actually happen in a street fight, right? One person is going to be standing like a non-Wing Chun attacker, and they're going to come in with swings and punches and kicks and grappling attacks and all this kind of stuff. So if we're going to do sparring, non-Wing Chun Chi Sao sparring, it's got to be I'm Wing Chun, you're not Wing Chun. Otherwise, what the hell are we practicing? All right? The Wing Chun people sparring, trying to hit each other with chain punches and hot mops. It makes no sense. All right? This doesn't make any sense, right? So So the Wing Chun shoes allow you to kick with controlled power, right? But the problem is if you're using those Wing Chun shoes on a hardwood floor or a hard plastic floor or some kind of athletic floor, they're too slippery. The chance that you might fall is really great. And then also when you play the non-Wing Chun attacker and you got to throw like high roundhouse kicks and spin kicks, the chance that you're going to fall down and bust your butt is pretty high.
Damn.
So I've actually found the best way to use the Wing Chun shoes, which is on puzzle mats, all right? Or some kind of hard matting. So that the mats give the trainees, like if you do fall down or I sweep you or take you to the ground, you have a little bit of padding on the way down.
Okay.
And the puzzle mats are perfect because you can still drag your back foot, but it's not slippery. Like you notice that when we used to have the hardwood floors, you'd be super slippery, right?
Yeah.
But now that we have the mats, you can slide and do the perfect Wing Chun footwork, but you're not like you can throw a high kick or a spin kick. You're not going to fall on your butt.
Okay.
So I would very much suggest that WT instructors who use the traditional soft-soled Wing Chun shoes, which are better for teaching footwork and they're safer when you kick your partner or when you step on their feet, use puzzle mats, all right? Because then you got the right amount of, it's the right sweet spot, that Goldilocks zone of grip, but you can still slide, and you have the safety of falling down, but they're not too spongy. So you get those 1-inch thick puzzle mats. That is the best, right? But if you use the WT shoes on a hardwood floor, it's too dangerous, all right? And so that's generally what I would say for WT. So basically, what is my recommendation? It's literally the thing I do in my school. That's why we do it. But I'm not opposed to students training barefoot. It's just that, you know, sometimes...
those minimalist shoes.
Well,
barefoot shoes.
Here at City Wing Chun, if you're on the mats, you either have to wear the Wing Chun shoes or you go barefoot. Because those minimalist shoes have hard rubber floors and they tear the ass out of the mats. All right? So you have to be either in the Wing Chun shoes or barefoot here. Otherwise, if you wear sneakers on them, you're going to rip the mats up, right?
Okay.
Plus, I don't want any shoes that have been on the street on any of our mats,
Ew,
right?
you nasty.
Exactly, right? So that's what I would recommend. The Fei Yue shoes, those wushu shoes, they're hard, sticky rubber.
How you say it?
Fei Yue, but I don't know what character Yue is, all right?
Okay.
Fei is probably fly in Mandarin, and Yue, this is Mandarin. They're from mainland China, and they're what all the wushu people wear, and they have them in white or black, and they have little laces.
They look cool.
They look like low-top Converse, kind of, but those soles are too sticky. You can't turn well with those things. Now, of course, if you're on the street, you're going to be wearing your normal shoes or whatever. So the question is, well, if you're used to training in shoes that slide or whatever, like what about street fighting? Hey, like Sifu Leung Ting used to always say, if someone attacks you on the street, you just need to do one step and step in and you're fighting. Yeah. You don't need to do your footwork up and down the mat for practice reps and turning hundreds and hundreds of times to get good at it. You turn once on the street, you step in once in the street, you're not doing it again and again and again and again. So sometimes people don't realize that the needs for training are different than, you know, in training you're getting a lot of reps, so this is a different requirement than when you just step in once and punch someone, right? So this is why I'm not too... It's not too much of a big deal. You either go barefoot or you wear some kind of Wing Chun shoes or whatever. And if you are at a school that has a hard floor, then I would wear some kind of low tops that you have to find a sole that is the right amount of stick and slide. So you have to try those out. So some Adidas, low top Adidas are okay, but it depends on the model. So yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
One more?
Yeah, I think we got time for one more. Next up, let's see. Let me scroll. Scroll a little.
You know when he scrolls, you know what's coming.
What?
Yeah.
What's that?
A question that you already asked me on a previous episode.
Yeah. Nah.
All right.
I don't think.
What do we got?
Next up, we got Dre Ison. What's so funny?
Why even bother saying scrolling? You didn't scroll.
I had to scroll because I was still in the Andrew Lin question right there. I had to scroll down.
Have you ever seen those videos of the DJs that pretend to like mix?
No,
right?
I've never seen those.
Right.
Even though it's just a playlist? Yeah.
Right
I never watched those. But anyway, Dre Ison has a question. Hey, dudes. My guys, what's up? I'm glad you guys killed it in the live episode.
Got it.
All right.
Not breaking eye contact with me while you're saying this. By the way, we just got a Patreon supporter.
Okay. That's dope.
That's going by the name Not Dryson. So we used to make a joke about Patreon, like Dryson's not a Patreon supporter. Well, apparently we got Not Dryson as a Patreon supporter, right? Who is, thank you, Not Dryson. But the thing is, like, he didn't submit his name.
Oh.
So I have a Patreon supporter whom I don't know their name. So literally, it's not Dre Ison.
It's not Dre Ison.
Yeah.
Well, we know that.
Right.
We know Dre Ison is a Patreon supporter anyway.
No.
So
No, he's not.
anyway, his question is, he said all that cool stuff. And then he says, yo, Sifu Alex, I got a hypothetical. My dude, you're in your crib watching UFC. Crazy fights happening on the weekend, Saturday night. You got the whole posse in the crib. Everyone's going nuts over these fights, and you just like, man, I'm super thirsty. I'm gonna go to the fridge real quick and get me a non-alcoholic Heineken Zero. I don't know why he wrote, like, that's something you drink anyway.
Right. Who drinks non-alcoholic Heineken?
That's some weird.
In fact,
you drink.
there's only one person I know who drinks that.
Who's that?
That's you.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's a
I-
weird thing.
I
you wrote
rarely,
there.
if ever, drink alcohol, but I never drink non-alcohol beers. All
No,
right?
I
You're the
love those
only-
Heineken Zeros though. Legit, they're the best.
Yeah.
Out of all the non-alcs.
All right.
So you go up to the fridge and you go to get your Heineken Zero, and as you're bending in the fridge, you get a straight. You like ice fell on your head. It was so heavy you get knocked out.
Okay.
You come to, and you're in a bright white circular room, no corners, no walls, any just straight circle room, and you're surrounded by 10 Francis Ngannous.
Oh, Jesus. I thought he was gonna ask me Gene LeBell is putting me in a fireman's carry question.
He didn't finish. I'm
Okay.
still reading.
Okay.
So 10 Francis Ngannous are surrounding you, but this room is pretty. It's like a good 20 diameter. 20-foot diameter.
It's not very big.
It's not that big, no?
Not if you have
Not at
Francis Ngannous around you. That's not big enough.
It's not big enough?
No, I'm not.
And-
I'm not liking my chances in this
And
room.
behind one of the Francis is a rope. It's
Okay.
a big, like a battle rope type of,
Okay.
like a battle rope. And up above him, about maybe 10 feet high, is a little door, like a little 5x5 door. And they all snarling at you. Snarling
Okay.
with salivation coming out their mouths. What do you do?
What do I do?
That's what he asked. What do you do?
Francis Ngannou is snarling.
No,
All these
10.
10 Francis Ngannou are snarling.
Yeah, they're snarling.
Like they're infected with a zombie virus.
Like rabies. Like a human rabies virus.
What would I do?
Yeah.
I would go, hey. Take it easy. All right? I can help you negotiate your contract dispute with Dana White. Come and sit with me.
What?
My wife is a lawyer.
Okay.
We've been discussing this whole thing. I think we can get you a better contract with the UFC and the ability to go fight Tyson Fury in boxing and make that 30 mil. We can do it. Come on, let's have a talk. Because your current representation is not really doing a good job. Come, let's talk.
All right.
I would bring them over.
Yeah.
I would give them a reason. And the moment I got near the door, I would just run. All right.
But there's no door. It's just that
hey.
little 5x5 up top.
The
10
5x5.
feet 5. 10 feet high.
I would ask them to prop me up there. All right. I'll be like, all right, prop me up there.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go get my wife.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
I would run. Oh, shit. I was out there. And that's all I got to say about that. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of The Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to The Kung Fu Genius. Hit that bell for notifications. And don't forget to write comments below anything you want me to answer in a future episode. And I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm Seagal. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex Richter, always the victor.
lots of, hey, he took a shit on himself.
Lots of.
You know what he did?
You know he crapped himself.
You know he crapped his ass.
You know he crapped his pants.
So that counts as one. So Jesus Christ, Dre. You fucking bastard.
I did that shit down here.
You bastard. But listen,
I
come
did
on,
that
man.
shit down here.
Come on, man.
Wow.
What's that sound?
Did you hear that?
AC came on.
Yeah, someone got some AC going on.
It's not me farting.
Take it easy. He did not know I was sitting on the toilet. So apparently, it is a very fitting way to talk to Steven Seagal.
I need a timeout. I'm sorry.
You need a timeout?
Yeah, I gotta race to the bathroom.
Okay.
I'm doing so like, my bad.
All right.
My bad, Andrew.
Yeah, I was wondering because there was like a couple minutes there where this dude's like a Mexican jumping bean in his chair.
Okay, just carry on and I can be Dre for a few minutes.
Oh, you would also do that too. Wow, one take Jake for both of us.
Whoa!
The apocalypse is near. Good job, man.
Ta-ta.
I don't care what Mikey Deane says. No, you
Sweet,
have
sweet.
to create a 10. Character 10.
Bam!
Character 10.
Bam! Ah,
That's
he
what's
gets
up.
it.